Hello, my name is Taylor Fuchs, and this is my research on the effect of invasive plant species on native plant species, specifically in the Sawtooth National Forest. The presence of native and invasive plant species contributes a significant proportion of the functionality and characteristics of biological ecosystems. Understanding the difference between native and invasive plants, how they interact with each other, and what these interactions mean for the surrounding environment are pertinent to conservation efforts and protecting lands and rare and endangered species. I will begin with the importance of native plant species and why their survival matters. For clarification, the United States Department of Agriculture explains native plant species as plants that comprise the homeostasis of a particular ecological system and have developed over hundreds or thousands of years in their specific area. Native plant species contribute to the stability and equilibrium of their habitat. They have evolved within and alongside the other organisms in their vicinity, giving them integral roles in the shaping and formation of their ecosystem. Because of this, the other forms of life that belong to these ecosystems rely heavily on native plant species and have had to respond to changes that the plant populations have gone through over time. Some examples of native plant species of the Sawtooth National Forest you might be familiar with are fireweed, sagebrush, and lodgepole pines. Fireweed is incredibly important to this ecosystem because of its ability to thrive in disturbed acidic soils, which occur after wildfires. This is known as a pioneer species, which are the first to colonize barren environments or previously biodiverse steady-state ecosystems that have been disrupted. This flower eventually brings other creatures back into burn areas as well. Mice, bees, and elk all look to the fireweed in order to know when they should make their way back into an area. Sagebrush is described as a hardy plant that can survive the many harsh conditions the Sawtooth National Forest faces every year. It provides food and habitat for a variety of species and is especially important to game animals during the winter. Lodgepole pine forms nearly monotypic forests in part of the SNRA and provides protection for other plants below. This is a fire-dependent species, requiring wildfires to maintain healthy populations of diverse ages. The bark of the lodgepole pine is fairly thin, minimizing the tree's defense to fire. However, the heat of fire opens the cones to release the seeds. This allows the species to regenerate and maintain its place in the forest habitat. I will now move on to the threat of invasive plant species to native plant species. Invasive plants, which include invasive annual grasses such as cheatgrass or medusa head, are defined as a non-native plant whose introduction does or is likely to cause economic or environmental harm or harm to human health. Noxious weeds are a subset of the broader invasive plants category. The term typically describes plant species that have been determined to be undesirable or injurious in some capacity. Within the state of Idaho, 37 state and county-listed noxious weed species are known to occur on or adjacent to the Boise National Forest and Sawtooth National Forest. Examples of noxious weeds in the Sawtooth National Forest include spotted knapweed and Dalmatian toadflax. Spotted knapweed is a native of Europe and Asia. It was introduced to North America in the 1890s as a contaminant in agricultural seed and through soil discarded from ship material. This species is a type of tumbleweed, which is a plant that breaks free of its roots and tumbles in the wind, facilitating the dispersal of its seeds. Similar to fireweed, knapweed is a pioneer species found in recently disturbed sites or openings, though it is harmful because it competes with native plants. As such, human disturbance is a major cause of infestations. This species is believed to have several traits that contribute to its extreme competitive ability, which include a taproot that sucks up water faster than the root systems of its neighbors, rapid dispersal through high seed production, low palatability, making it less likely to be eaten, and its purported release of biochemicals, allowing it to thrive by stunting the growth of neighboring plants. Dalmatian toadflax is a herbaceous plant native to Western Asia and southeastern Europe. It aggressively invades disturbed communities, including roadsides, graded areas, abandoned lots, rangelands, and riparian communities, displacing native and desirable species. Although cattle avoid grazing the species, Dalmatian toad flax contains a poisonous glucoside harmful to cattle if consumed in large quantities. Invasive plants are often able to overwhelm native plant communities and establish themselves as the dominant plant species, even on undisturbed sites in excellent condition, because most invasive plant species arrived in the United States often as seeds without the array of natural enemies to keep their populations in check. Therefore, native plants are often competitively disadvantaged compared to exotic plants because native plants have to contend with their natural enemies and foraging animals. The introduction of non-native plant species from other geographical areas can threaten local biodiversity, as these plants may act as invasive species colonizing natural environments, hybridizing with native populations, which jeopardizes their genetic integrity, act as vectors for parasites, and even in some cases represent a risk for human health. Invasive plants also cause numerous adverse environmental effects, including displacing native plants, reducing the functionality of habitat and forage for wildlife and livestock, threatening populations of threatened, endangered, and sensitive species, altering physical and biological properties of soil, including soil productivity, changing the intensity and frequency of fires, affecting wilderness character, and reducing recreational opportunities. In 2015, Eurasian water milfoil and curly-leaf pondweed were detected on watercraft entering Redfish Lake from the middle section of the Snake River. A total of 23 watercraft were inspected and found to be contaminated with aquatic vegetation. Removing these plants is critical to keeping these invasive species out of Redfish Lake and surrounding water bodies with critical habitats for listed species. Once established, aquatic invasive plant species are extremely difficult to eradicate and pose a serious threat to the ecological integrity of aquatic environments. Establishment of these species in headwaters of the Columbia River system is especially momentous as they pose a source for infesting the entire downstream aquatic ecosystem. Establishment of an infestation source in Redfish Lake could distribute propagules of these invasive plants throughout the downstream Salmon River, Snake River, and Columbia River systems. To close this out, I will focus on potential solutions that have been proposed to maintain infestations of invasive plant species. The USDA has a Sawtooth and Boise National Forests Invasive Species Project, which proposes biocontrol as a possible solution to the increasing amounts of invasive plant species. The concept of biocontrol is to reconnect the link between invasive plants and their natural enemies and reduce negative impacts of the target weed to tolerable levels. Biocontrol is the use of plant predators or pathogens to weaken and reduce the ability of invasive plant species to compete and/or reproduce. Biocontrol agents typically include host-specific insects, mites, nematodes, and pathogens of a targeted plant species. The proposal also includes treating invasive plants annually with an effective combination of treatments including biological, manual and mechanical, chemical herbicides, and restoration methods. A study in Italy that has researched native plants in national parks proposes that preservation facilities such as botanic gardens are important to preserve plant diversity off-site and can prevent extinction through integrated conservation action. Off-site conservation of plants can be used to avoid complete extinction of very rare species, and botanical gardens, seed banks, and nurseries can be very effective in achieving these goals, which include creating a backup of genetic material if these conservation actions fail, preserving a significant portion of the genetic diversity of a species, and propagating species for restoration. Reproduction by seed is preferred in order to ensure the genetic diversity and avoid genetic drift of the cultivated plants. The diffusion of reproduced plants in the territory by selling and giving to cultivate them in the gardens reduces the risk linked to the cultivation. The strength of cultivation in the nursery and the sale of wild plants both develop propagation structures and the opportunity to obtain a large number of individuals. Moreover, the off-site collections of wild ornamental plants, as well as being sold, they provide the opportunity to be used for translocation and reinforcement of wild populations, guaranteeing the plant genetic diversity. So, this concludes my presentation, and I'd like to thank my professor, David Parrott, for advising me throughout the process of this project. If you have any questions or comments regarding my research or this presentation, here is my email. Thank you for watching.